Alright guys, welcome to the next episode of our driver career mode here in F123. We're actually in Texas. We're in COTA this time around. And I didn't realize, I didn't think Texas had a sprint race set up. But we're going to be two back-to-back sprint races. So we're going to have to be playing the careful game again with our tire compounds. And we did get some information that we're going to have some R&D changes, so we get confirmation on those R&D changes. So we didn't get energy store, we did get a lot of other stuff completed, and the weather is going to be a little bit overcast, qualifying is going to be dry, and then it looks like durability is going to be affected after the end of this first season. So we got a lot of general wear upgrades from our manufacturer, and we don't have control over the stuff. You guys don't remember we had it set to auto. So all of these components, we're gonna have to hope that the team saves them on their own, saves some R&D points to save these components. Otherwise, they're gonna be left behind in the R&D tree for next season. So, because we're only ahead of Alfa Romeo and AlphaTauri at this point. So, without further ado, and not really wanting to, or much of a review from last week, but P14 in guitar, as we had that, like I was saying in the last episode, we got struck by lightning twice there in guitar, and we hope to have a better weekend here in COTA, as we're going to go ahead and jump into practice. We're not really going to have much practice to do in the rain. I just hope we can get some dry practice runs before qualifying. That way we can expect the best results for this weekend. So we're going to go ahead and get right into practice, and we'll see you guys for qualifying. Alright, as you can see with that single practice session in the rain that we had literally no time to really perfect our dry run in our home race, our second home race of the season. So we're going to be side by side with our teammate Logan Sargent to start out the sprint race. And there was a little bit of improvement, but it wasn't enough to get out of Q1. As Kevin Magnussen, Yuki Tsunoda, and Nick DeVries round out the rest of the bottom five out for Q1. So we're going to go ahead and jump right to our sprint race.
Forget pit stops, forget fuel management. It's pedal to the metal all the way here as we get ready for today's sprint. Let's run you through the driver grid order for today's exciting sprint. An immense lap from Lewis Hamilton yesterday puts him on pole position. And starting next to them is George Russell. Looking at the rest of today's grid, we have Fernando Alonso, Verstappen, Norris, Perez, Gasly, Sainz, Leclerc, Stroll, Oscar Piastri, Ocon, Bottas, Zhou, Hulkenberg, Magnussen, Sargent, Johnson, Tsunoda, and Nick DeVries. Which of these drivers will get pole position today? We'll soon find out.
Alright, so here we are slotting into our position next to our teammate Logan Sargent in P18, running the medium tires so we can save a set of softs for the main race. And our 5 red lights are on. Sonoda and Rees in the back row behind us. We're off to an okay start. The Haas is ahead of us, off to an okay start as well. I see an opening towards the middle. So we're coming up the hill and we move to the outside, making the moves on those 2 Haas's, Granu Zhou and I believe Ocon as well. We're ended up side by side with Zhou behind Esteban Ocon. Coming into these S's, we have a lot of trouble through these S's this weekend as we end up going wide through that first long right-hander. You can see as we then slot in behind Ocon. Now 1 sec behind Ocon is already. As we're trying to fend off the Haas's. Joe's trying to jockey for a position as Sargent still back there in P18, cutting the corner there a little bit, but no warnings or anything like that as we're coming to sector 2 straight. A little bit of wheel spin there on these mediums as we're going to see a lot of action through this sector 2 straight this weekend as the sunset is shining on our cars. P14 now, we're only halfway through the race as we're trying to catch up to Esteban Ocon, hitting these corners pretty well, and trying to see if we'll end up using the mediums or softs to start for the weekend. But these medium tires are feeling pretty good through this first lap, but we still have a lot more of a sprint race to make that judgment call for the start as we get a warning for going over the limit, track limits there. As we're still trying to close in on Esteban Ocon, but we don't get DRS till sector 3, and we end up going a little bit wide, I believe, through this and getting a little bit of wheel spin. So Hulkenberg is able to try and close in on us as we start lap 2, but it's not going to be enough because it's not till lap 5 that we see some action. Finally able to get close enough to Esteban Ocon and Venturi Paddock. As we have DRS, they had a better launch than us, as we took a little bit more curb than we would like. As we try to brake late as possible and end up side by side with Esteban Ocon. We have the inside for this next turn, so we kind of force him out, play his hand as we slot into P13 at the start of lap 6. So you can see the difficulty that we have there through these S's, a little bit of wheel spin, early turn in. And Ocon is trying to close in as we're basically too far away from Bottas after those S's. He's now 1 second ahead, more than 1 second ahead of us, so we're not going to get DRS here. Esteban Ocon will get DRS if he has a better launch than us through the sector straight. We're going to be on board with him, but we are pulling away. We had a better launch on these medium tires. We did burn a little bit more rubber on a start than he did, as we made a lot of ground so far already through this sprint race. So at least 4 or 5 positions is, I believe, 3, 4, 5 positions as we're sitting in P13 for the remainder of this sprint race. So we're going to finish in P13, a way better start.
So then, it's time to see how this result affects the Drivers' Championship. Well, not the result our points leader would have wanted, but it certainly makes things interesting going forward. Well, that wraps up the sprint. All that remains is the main event. We'll be live and uninterrupted for the Grand Prix tomorrow, so make sure you join us then.
Alright, so a not very eventful sprint race here in Texas, in COTA, but we did manage to get up in the P13 after finally being able to pass Esteban Ocon on lap 6, as we progressed from position 18 up to P13 for the main race. Hopefully the tire degradation is a lot nicer during the main race here, as we were really starting to feel those medium tires through the S's, as I've always had trouble throughout the last few years on the S's here in COTA. So P13 start for the main event. Let's see if we can get some points.
Here we are then in one of the fastest growing cities in the United States, the fabulous Austin in the great state of Texas. The circuit itself, 14 miles southeast of the city centre, has been home to the US Grand Prix since 2012, the latest in a long list of iconic tracks to have that honour. We're racing then today in Travis County, Texas, around the 20 corners of this wonderful Circuit of the Americas. We'll be reaching speeds of around 200 miles per hour here today, and there are plenty of good opportunities to pass, especially through the 2 DRS zones into Turn 1 and the long back straight into Turn 12. It's time to see how our drivers are stacking up after yesterday's exciting qualifying session. An immense lap from Lewis Hamilton yesterday puts him on pole position, and Max Verstappen lines up alongside. Moving on to the rest of the grid, we have Perez, Fernando Alonso, Sainz, Leclerc, Russell, Gasly, Oscar Piastri, Stroll, Bottas, Johnson, Ocon, Hulkenberg, Norris, Magnussen, Tsunoda, Joe, Sargent, and Nick de Vries. It's almost time for the lights to go out, so let's head down to the track where preparations are underway. It's race day yet again, and joining me for a chat is Natalie Pinkham. Now, our racers are certainly in for a rough day today. What will you be watching for as they go down into Turn 1?
There has been an exponential growth in the popularity of Formula One, and it is fantastic to see. This is the glue that's bonding families together. This is the talking point on a Sunday afternoon as they sit round and watch the race as a unit. I love the fact that people are starting to appreciate the various nuances of the sport, the fact there are so many layers to it. This is the cutting edge of technology, but there's also so much personality and sacrifice, personal sacrifice, that gets drivers and race teams where they are today.
All right, so a handful of people getting penalties for the start of the main race. We're going to be going soft to medium, a little bit of overcast going into the mediums. We may be able to stretch out the softs if we feel like it, but more than likely we'll be going in on lap 9 if there aren't any safety cars or red flags. And still feeling a lot of wheel spin from that sprint race, like I said. But yeah, let's get right into it. Alright, slotting into P12 now after the penalty that goes to Lando Norris. I believe he's starting P15 now.
Parking there, nice one. That's going to give you the edge if you can get good launch as the race starts.
And we are going to get a little bit better launch as our 5 red lights are on. We did burn those tires a little bit, wheel spin, as we're on to a good launch. The Aston Martin ahead of us, not very better than us. Bottas running to the outside, making it 3 wide. We're taking it easy, giving that position to Hulkenberg as we move outside wide with Stroll and Bottas. A little bit of wheel spin there as we're holding the inside line. A little bit of contact to Bottas. And that extra little spin of those soft tires really did help. And a way better entry into the S's compared to the start of the sprint race as we're slotting into P10. So currently 2 positions up from the start as we're not even all the way through Sector 1. But a little bit of wheel spin there. As you can see, as we're coming out of the S's, Pierre Gasly next up as we're late on the brakes to get an outer lane through the sector 2 straight, and we get ahead of Gasly. So 3 positions, and we're not even halfway through the first lap of the main race, and we're running these soft tires. As you can see, Aston Martin of Alonso side by side with Carlos Sainz, Hamilton, Verstappen, Perez leading the race so far. And we got ahead of Gasly. So next up is the rookie of Oscar Piastri. So myself and Piastri doing better of all 4 rookies this season. As if you haven't noticed, we are running a newer helmet. That helmet description, the information can be in the description to RaceDepartment for that helmet. And at the time of editing, basically recording the replay and editing the video, it's after October 16th, as they came out with newer models of the cars. So we're using a download file from RaceDepartment. It's also going to be in the description for the pre-sport update car models. So we finally make that move on Oscar Piastri in lap 2. And like I said, we're going to see a lot of action there in Sector 2. As next up is Charles Leclerc in the Ferrari. And then the Mercedes of George Russell up in P6. A little bit of wheel spin there from the soft tires as Piastri's all over our back end. A little bit more wheel spin that I would have liked. A little bit more power that I put down. As we're taking this long right-hander to round up the end of lap 2. Piastri, 0.25 seconds behind us. Trying not to get wheel spin off of these last 2 corners as we take that last corner pretty well. But a little bit too much curve that I would have liked. And Piastri's still pretty much close behind us. So we do like to take the long right-handers, long braking zones. As lap 3 now. And we have DRS on Leclerc. Piastri close behind. He's only about 8/10 back. But he ends up closing in on us as we force Leclerc back in P8. As you can see that he's closing that gap there. And George Russell now up ahead of us as we're coming through the Sector 2 snakes. Pretty much, I don't know what necessarily it's called, but Sector 2, start of Sector 3. Really, our car really doesn't like it, so we have to brake early. See Piastri and Leclerc trying to make moves on us. Leclerc gets ahead on the inside. Piastri's trying to make a move. You can see him in the mirror there on the left side as we fend him off. We'll go a little bit wide late on the brakes. A little bit of wheel spin from Leclerc ahead of us as we're lap 5 now, rounding out towards the end of lap 5. And not really much movement from the rest of the drivers. As we have a 3-way fight for P7, so myself, Leclerc, and Piastri fighting for P7. As we're all on soft tires, I believe. Yes, Leclerc is on the soft tires and he's leading. So that's basically going to round out the end of lap 5. We do have the DRS on him, and Piastri does as well, but without wheel spin, Piastri is able to make a move on the inside. You can see him in the mirrors as he's passing as we're coming up the hill. And like I said, we're going to make that late braking zone. Pushing him to the inside. We don't quite push him too far where he gets a warning for track limits, but a very aggressive move on our part. And you can see how difficult it is for us on the chicane as we get out of the chicanes. And like always, Piastri right on us. We make a wide turn through Sector 2. We both get DRS, and we're basically, I'm full throttle. I don't know about Piastri, but we're side by side, full throttle with DRS. Trying to see who will outperform the other, but we do end up outbraking Piastri, as we do still have to end up giving him the inside of that corner, but we get the outside of the next corner in turn. So moving through the end of Sector 2, start of Sector 3 pretty well, as a little snap of wheel spin there, and we're still trying to fight to catch up to Leclerc. There's about a 2.7 gap between himself and his partner, Carlos Sainz, up in P6. So that's going to round up the end of lap 6. Little snap of oversteer there as we start the next lap. And Piastri loses a little bit of ground because he had to move out of the way, so he wasn't able to make the pass on this straight. That leaves us a little bit of breathing room. As we yet again come to these S's, we're going to go ahead and jump over to our popular area for this weekend, the second sector straight, as we try to make another move on Leclerc on the inside this time. Piastri's trying to close in. He has DRS and Bottas back there in P10 as well, as we make that move on Leclerc. And like I said, this is a lot of action this weekend in this area, Sector 2. The main straight has, I'm pretty sure it has less overtakes than the Sector 2 straight, but we're holding on about 9/10 of a second ahead of Leclerc. But as we're coming through the next lap, Piastri has passed him, and he's passing us on the inside with a lot more momentum, and we don't have DRS, so these soft tires are really starting to feel it, as we do get a little bit more worry on these soft tires as we're getting closer. The plan was to pit on lap 10 with these soft tires, but with the snaps of wheel spin that we've been getting, is I believe we're going to be Having trouble through this right-hander. No, not quite here yet, and we're losing a little bit of ground on Piastri at this point. So we can see that he has the momentum. We're clear of Leclerc. He's 1.5 seconds behind us now. As you can see, Piastri trying to pull away through Sector 1. And we're basically out of that fight. But at the end of this next lap, we're coming through Sector 2, end of Sector 3. That's the snap I was talking about. And the wheel spin on the car. As Bottas is now ahead of Leclerc. We're going to end up coming in, swapping out of these soft tires. We're not going to be the only ones pitting on lap 9. We have Verstappen, George Russell, myself, Bottas, Leclerc, all coming into the pits for our stops. We're going to be swapping over to the mediums. So you can see the Mercedes of George Russell getting out just ahead of us. And you can see a little bit of delay on the pit crew there. They're gritty, the texturing on that. I'm still trying to figure out how to fix that. But Bottas coming out behind us in the pits, and we're side by side with Nick DeVries. And he's on a hard tires, so he's still on old hard tires. We should have let him pass, as these are brand new mediums. You can see we're trying to warm these mediums up, and we're basically trying to push them too hard on a brand new lap as we go a little bit wide out of the racing line. And DeVries is right there behind us. So a little bit unfortunate move on my end. I should have let him pass, as we're trying to nurture these newer tires into the perfect temperature, basically, as we're Sector 2 straight. No DRS, no yellow flags at this point, but Tsunoda having a DNF for an engine failure. Moving on to the next lap. The start of the next lap, end of this lap, start of the next lap. As there wasn't any position changes up until now, so we were back in P12, making a position. Our teammate Sergeant Joe Hulkenberg, all coming into the pits as we're slotting up into P9. And look who it is, it's Oscar Piastri, who just came out of the pits, the train of pits here. Sam Hamilton, Sainz, and Piastri coming out of the pits. As we have that momentum through turn 1, and we have to make the inside turn. As you can see him try to make a move on us through these S's. But that undercut that we did really worked out on Piastri, as I believe we're on a 1 lap older set of mediums at this point. Maybe 2, I believe it's 2 actually. But Hamilton on a harder set of hard tires, which means we're going to fight for that position to make it a little bit easier for us for that position. And we try to catch up, and as we always do, we're going to be late on the brakes, almost coming in contact with Hamilton here at the end. Trying not to make a move on him. That's too dangerous. You can see the perspective of that Williams helmet. And once again, the information is going to be in the description. So we're going to be using that for the remainder of the season. And we're going to be swapping it out at the end of the season for next season. So we make that position on Hamilton, get a better launch out of that left-hander, and leaving Piastri to try to make a move on him now as we're coming through the end of lap 11. And we're not going to have DRS. So Hamilton and Piastri are going to have DRS. We go wide. We get our final warning for track limits there on the last corner. As Sainz makes a move on Alonso. Hamilton makes a move on the outside, trying to make a move on us as we're still fighting for P6. Verstappen, Perez, Russell leading the top 3. As we're coming to these S's as best as possible, trying to run these mediums into the ground, try to stay as level as possible, trying to catch up to Alonso. He's about 1.9 seconds ahead of us. So we're basically having to defend against Hamilton and Piastri of the McLaren and the Mercedes. And like I said before, Sector 2 straight, it's going to be a lot of action, as both Hamilton and Piastri are going to have DRS. You can see Hamilton almost coming in contact with us on that back left. As we're basically going to hold the right side as Hamilton and Piastri run a DRS train on us. We let Hamilton through without any effort. A little bit more contact coming in, and Piastri trying to make a move. Not quite side by side with us yet. is we ran into the back of the tire. No front wing damage at this point. So there was another tire touch there. As Piastri tries to make a move on the inside there. And he gets his second warning for track limits. Doing a lot better than I am. As, yeah, so we're trying to catch up to Hamilton, who is 1.9 seconds behind Alonso. Rounding out the end of lap 12, we get the DRS on him. We're going wide, ending up side by side with him, having a pretty good launch. Not only is that good launch, we have DRS, we have the softer set of racing tires, and we end up braking late, leaving him the inside. We get ahead of him for these S's on lap 13. That's basically going to be the entirety of our race right now, is trying to defend our position. As you can see that we finally managed to get over a second ahead of Hamilton and Piastri, and we're basically fighting the rest of the way to stay as far ahead as possible out of DRS. Try to catch up to Alonso, who's up in P5. So currently, lap 13, we are P6 in the Williams on these medium tires. The medium tires are feeling a lot better than they did in the sprint race. You see Piastri is close enough to try to make a move on him, but we are going to end up getting a 3-second time penalty for track limits on that last corner. And Piastri makes it inside the 3-second gap to beat us out for
P7.
P7.
That's the end of the race. We'll see you in Parc Fermé.
That's it then for another magnificent United States Grand Prix. And they've hung on to take a sublime victory here today. Natalie Pinkham, how do you think they were able to set themselves apart today?
I want to know if that was as easy as it looked. An absolute masterclass today.
Red Bull put up an outstanding fight for the front position today, and it's great to see it paid off for them. They do so much for the sport that you can't help but be delighted by today's race win. Let's have a look then at the drivers' standings. Max Verstappen now leads the Drivers' Championship. So then, Natalie Pinkham, who would you rank as your driver of the day?
Often, my go-to would be a driver who's managed to pull off an especially impressive feat during the race. However, in this instance, I was more impressed by Max Verstappen's solid, clean driving throughout the event.
It's time to see how things are shaping up in the Constructors' Championship. It was a tough race for our championship leaders who lose ground at the top of the table. Well, what an end to another fantastic weekend of racing. Thanks to everyone who joined us, and we'll see you for the next one.
Alright, so a very eventful main race. We had a fight for some time against Oscar Piastri there at the end with a 3-second time penalty for track limits. And like I was saying, Max Verstappen, new leader of the driver standings. The constructor standing still belongs to Mercedes as long as they could perform with a 55-point gap till the end of the season, as George Russell 1 point down from that fight. So it's a fight between George Russell and Max Verstappen, but they did both get on the podium, and we managed to get some points on the board, finishing in P7 for the race from P12. There's a 3-second time, or 3-second penalty. As Oscar Piastri, looks like he did get bumped up ahead of us, so he did manage to beat us on a time. So yes, P7 for 6 points instead of 8 points. As yeah, our teammate Logan Sargent still not doing so well. He's P18 from P19. So Yuki Tsunoda going out there the first half before we went into the pit. And then Esteban Ocon back there, P13, no gain from him. But it was an interesting race here in COTA, as I believe our next race is Mexico. Yes, I believe it's Mexico, and then Brazil, Qatar, and then Abu Dhabi. So we'll see you guys in the next episode.